Hi guys, and welcome to another Gertzwold video. Today we are going to be talking about a COVID vacation. So every year we go on a vacation. We've been to England, we've been to Washington, we've been all over the place. And this year, when COVID happened, we were really disappointed that we weren't going to be able to go on our family vacation. So I started looking online, I did a bunch of research to see what we could do to still have a family vacation, but we still wanted to keep everybody safe. So when this all came out, we were really torn between whether we should keep our daughter, our 3-year-old daughter, in daycare or take her out. My mother-in-law is actually a preschool teacher, so we're fortunate enough to be able to take Emerson out of daycare and both of us continue to work. So while we worked, my mother-in-law would come over and watch Emerson. So we really had everybody quarantined. We ordered our groceries online. We did everything from home. We didn't really go out. We were all really scared about going out and getting anybody sick. So we really, really tried as hard as we could to stay home and do everything to social distance. So when the June time frame came around, and that's usually when we take our family vacations, we were very disappointed that we couldn't just hop on a plane and go somewhere like we normally do. Last year we were in Portland. We took a trip up to the beach and it was beautiful. But again, there was a lot of social interaction there. We had hotels that we stayed at. We rented cars, things like that. So this year, as I was doing my research, I thought, why not take an RV trip? So we ended up renting a Class C RV and we just went around and did a driving trip, and it was a ton of fun. So today I'm just going to kind of talk to you guys about some of the tips that we learned, some of the pros and cons between doing it, and some of the sites that I used that was really helpful. So first off, we live in South Dakota. We live in a small town. So one of the things that we thought we would do is we would go to a bigger city to rent our RV. Now, when you rent an RV or a Class C, a Class A, the Class A's are the really big ones. The Class C's are like a truck with a camper on top of it. So what we decided is if you go to a bigger city, you won't have to pay as much in mileage. So we have about 500 miles between the city that we live in Denver, Colorado, which is where we actually rented the RV from. So RVs also drive a lot slower. So you can only go about 65 miles an hour in an RV. So what we did is we all hopped into the truck, we drove to Denver, and we rented our RV from there. That saved us about 500 miles on mileage, as well as we were able to just drive up there, get there as fast as we could, and hop into the RV. One other pro tip that we had that was really, really helpful during this trip is we ordered our groceries at a Walmart pickup in Colorado, where we actually picked up the RV. So it was only about 5 miles away from where we actually got the RV. So all we did was we ordered our groceries for the entire trip that we had. Before we picked up the RV, we did drive the truck to the pickup, picked up our groceries, and then went to the RV. That is one thing I think I would have done a little bit differently. I think if I would have actually picked up the groceries in the RV, it would have been a lot easier because we had to get the truck, get all the groceries in the truck, and then we had to move all of the groceries from the truck into the RV. And it worked. It worked out well, but it just was a whole nother transition of groceries that didn't necessarily have to happen. So if I were to do this trip again, that is one thing I would change, is I would just get the groceries after I get the RV. So the other thing that is a little different when you take a vacation, when you're trying to social distance and stay away from people, is you have to make sure that you have a place to stay. So you have a decision whether you want to pick up the RV right away early in the morning, or if you want to pick it up later at night and stay in a campground. We chose to get up early in the morning, drive to Denver, which was about 5.5 hours for us, and then get the RV. And we just stayed in a RV park that was close. It was only about 10 miles away. It worked out perfect. We were able to go to the couple's house. I will link the website below that I went to. I actually used a website called Outdoorsy to rent the RV. It was great. It was just from a couple that rents out their RV for people to use. It had some stipulations on there like mileage usage, generator usage, things like that. But we picked up the RV and we drove about 10 miles to the campground, and it worked out great. It gave us the chance to test driving out the RV before going on a long haul trip. And it just gave us the opportunity to put the groceries away, get everybody settled in. We did bring our own sheets. We brought own pillows. We brought blankets. Everything we brought from home because we didn't want to risk using any of their stuff. So once you get on Outdoorsy, you can rent RVs. There's different stipulations for every renter. I'll give you an example of what we did. I'll link that here and I'll put it down below. But we got in, since COVID was going on, the couple actually already did a COVID clean. So they bleached everything, sanitized everything, sterilized everything before we got in there. But I did also go in, I wore my face mask, I put disinfectant wipes, spray. I went in and I cleaned the whole RV down before Emerson and my husband came in. Then Emerson and my husband came into the RV. We drove off out of their driveway. We went to the campground, put our groceries away that night and got settled in. One of the other things that I would do is maybe doing a little bit of research on the campground that we stayed at. We just found one that was close and picked. You got to make sure you find one with full hookups or dump stations. So it's kind of a little bit of a challenge trying to get that set up. We were fortunate enough that we do have our own camper, so we are used to doing that. So that was a little bit easier for us. But if you haven't, I'm sure there's tons of videos out there on how to do the sewer hookups and the water hookups. So make sure you're looking for sites that are adequate for the RV. So once we got to the first campground, then we were able to use the website called Road Trippers. Road Trippers what gave us the ability to enter in 5 locations that we were going to, and we started mapping out the trip that we wanted to go on. So we started in South Dakota, we got over to Colorado, and we wanted to work our way over to Utah. When we got to Utah, we wanted to go to the Moab area, the Arches National Park. We did want to get over to Bryce Canyon. We did not end up getting that far. But one of the perks with an RV is you can make it up as you go. It was amazing. Originally we had set 4 hours per day to drive to location to location. That's a little bit much driving. So the first 2 days we did end up driving about 4 to 4.5 hours, and I will put the map map image right here so you can see that. But we did drive about 4 to 4.5 hours those first 2 days, and it was a lot. So I would recommend, if we were to do this trip, to maybe slow down the trip a little bit more, maybe only drive 2.5 to 3 hours like we did towards the end of the trip, and that seemed to work out a lot better. Once we got over to Utah, we kept going on our trip. We usually stayed in a site one night, and then we moved on to the next site. One thing that I really did like about driving the RV is everybody was able to see. So when you're in a car, it's really frustrating when you're shoved all the way in the back and you can't see what's going on. In an RV, you just have a completely different experience. And it was fun. We could all get up, and if we needed to have a snack or say somebody needed to go to the bathroom, we could just pull over really quick and the bathroom was right there. That was amazing. So having a 3-year-old, and she's potty training, that is one of the biggest challenges that we have with trips, is trying to travel around and getting her to go to the bathroom. I will say I do have some good tips with road trips for toddlers while potty training. We do carry around a little toilet that we put into our truck that we can pull over to the side of the road and use. I will link that down below, but if you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know. Be happy to make a video on that. Anyways, off of my tangent. One of the great things is we had a toilet inside the vehicle. So we were able to pull over, Emerson could just go to the bathroom, we washed her hands, we hopped her right back into her car seat, and we kept moving. So now a lot of you are thinking, well, you're in an RV, why do you have to be in a car seat? For me personally, I was not comfortable with Emerson not being in her car seat. So there was a car seat latch that we were able to latch the car seat to. And she sat in her car seat for probably about 90% of the trip. When we were in national parks and we were going a little bit slower, there wasn't as much traffic around, we did have her outside of her car seat just to kind of let her move around a little bit because she's 3 and she can't last very long. So a lot of times when we were trying to travel, we did time our traveling around her nap time so that we could get her into the car seat, and then we could all still see, we could see all the beautiful sights that she's not going to be interested in anyways, and we traveled during that time. So we would sleep at night, wake up. It would take us probably 2 to 3 hours to really get going. We had breakfast, would get a quick luncheon, and then we would drive to our next destination. So our food costs on this trip was actually quite a bit less than it has been on any of the trips we've ever taken. So that was a really big pro, is that we could have snacks whenever we wanted. We could go to the bathroom whenever you wanted. Also, another thing that was very interesting about this trip and that we did thoroughly enjoy is there is a wide variety of sites you can stay at. You can stay at sites with pools or playgrounds, or you can stay at sites that have full hookups, or you can stay at sites that have running water. There's so many different sites that you can have. There are also other sites called boondocking. So we're not full-time RVers. This is not something we do all the time. So it was kind of an unusual term for us. So boondocking is when you fill up all of your tanks and you go to a site that actually does not have any hookups or any water connected to it. But a lot of times you can get these sites for free. So we, after we went to Moab and we decided that Moab and Utah was extremely hot and it just was not for us. It was beautiful country, but it was not, the temperature was really hot. So once we figured out that we wanted to actually leave the Utah area and we went back to Colorado, we found a couple national parks that allowed us to boondock, and we ended up boondocking for 2 days. So 2 days with 6 people, we had full tanks of water, everybody was able to take showers. During our outdoorsy contract, we had 4 hours of generator usage that we could use every single day. Since we hadn't used any of our generator usage up to there, we were able to run the generator throughout the night and make sure that the AC was still running. The second night, we did not end up needing it because it was so cold. So we were able to open up the windows and everything, and we did not need it. But I will say, out of all of the sites, for my family and our personality, we really did enjoy the boondocking. We were able to be out in the wilderness. We were able to see tons of animals, waterfalls, lots of things like that. So we really did enjoy the boondocking, but that is another pro to an RV trip, is you can pick the type of sites that works best for you and your family and your decision. So another good thing about traveling RV is you have more room. So in the RV, there's room for everybody. So we were able to keep all of our stuff in the RV and we were able to put it away. So there was tons of closet space, tons of bed space. So that worked out really good for us. That being said, is you can bring your own stuff. So like I said earlier, we brought our own bedding, we brought pillows, we brought food, we brought everything. So we had no need to go to a store or no need to really interact with anybody, unless the great thing with this is we could nap with Emerson. So Emerson can take her naps at any time. As you guys heard it earlier, that was really great. A lot of times when we are on a vacation, we have to dedicate our excursions and our things around Emerson's nap. And this worked out good because we just used Emerson's nap time to travel from point A to point B, which was really great. Some of the cons with the trip. So this was a tricky list for me to come up with because we did really enjoy our vacation, but there are some cons to trip like there is with anything. One of the biggest cons is we did not have another vehicle. So when we got to a site, for example, when we boondocked for 2 days, we didn't have another vehicle to take that vehicle to go somewhere else to see. So there was a little village that we wanted to go check out and go on a few hikes in Colorado. And what we had to do is we had to pack up our RV and we had to drive to the hiking spot, go on our hike, come back, and then we had to unpack our RV again. That was kind of tricky when you're doing boondocking because you want to make sure that your site is still safe. So we did have to leave some items there. So we just left a picnic table with our chairs so no one would take our spot, which worked great. But I would say if this is something that you're going to do full time, or if you're going to do it any longer than what we did 10 days. If you're going to do anything longer than that, I would strongly suggest bringing another car or some other source. I saw a lot of RVs that had bikes and things like that. That would also be, another option depending on how far you're going. But that was one of the big cons. Another thing that was a little different that we weren't really anticipating, or that I didn't really expect until we got on the road, was how slow the travel was. You are in a bigger vehicle, and there are certain roads that you can't go on. So there's certain websites, and I'll link them all down below, but there's certain websites that will tell you that you can't go on roads. For example, we were going to go over to Bryce Canyon, but there was a lot of tunnels that we could not go through because our RV was too big. So in order to do that, we would have had to park our RV at the site and then use a shuttle system to go through the RV. Since we were doing social distancing, that did not seem like something we wanted to do because you're going to get on a bus with a bunch of people that you don't know and you don't know where they've been with. So we threw that out the picture and we ended up going back to Colorado. So it is kind of tricky trying to figure out what roads you could go on and things like that. So having that separate car would be nice, as well as your travel is a little bit slower. So in a car, when you anticipate that you can go 4 hours a day with your kids or with a toddler, really that's to add another hour to 2 hours on top of that with an RV, with the stops that you're going to have to take, the slowness that you're going to have to take, and some of the roads that you're not going to be able to go on. So you're going to have to go on a few more detours. So I would strongly recommend that you limit your amount of travel time to 2 to 3 hours. That way you can still get to your destination, you can still travel around and see a lot of different things, but you're not spending your entire day driving to that site. The other thing that was a little bit of a con was the mileage. So on our site, we had a certain number of miles that you could drive in a day, and that was it. So without having another car, we really had to drive to our destination, stay at that destination, drive to the next destination, stay at that destination, and so on and so on. We only had about 100 miles a day, and we went well over that. I think we spent over $300 in mileage overage because we drove so much extra. In our opinion, we do feel like that was worth it because we were able to see a lot more and do a lot more. But do keep in mind that that mileage cap, you're probably going to spend more than that, and you're probably going to drive more than that if you're going on a longer trip than just like a weekend vacation getaway. So that was one of our goals, is to see as much as we could in the 10 days that we took the trip. So we did end up going over on the mileage, but the owner was understanding, and that was just in the contract through Outdoorsy. So make sure when you're checking your RV, you want to try to find one that has higher mileage cap so that you don't have to spend so much in overage. Outside of all of those cons, which is only a few cons, the trip was amazing. We were able to see so much, do so much, and we were still able to keep everybody safe. None of us got sick. None of us actually had any interaction with other people when we got to our campsites. Most of them were already practicing social distancing and practicing the COVID rules and stuff like that they have set up. So a lot of our sites were actually already ready for us. We just had to go to the house or the check-in station, and our name was normally on a list, and all you have to do is drive up to that site. So I'll put some links down below that are very helpful for this, and some of the sites that we used, along with the trip that we took, where we ended up going, along with some pictures. It was a great trip. If you're trying to do a vacation during COVID, I would strongly recommend an RV. Well, guys, that is our COVID vacation. So there's not that many cons, and I will say this was one of my favorite vacations that we took. I will link all of the stuff that I talked about down below. Please add any comments if you do have any comments or questions, along with please subscribe to my channel for next week's video. Thanks, guys.